our next speaker is Ken Taylor. He's from that half of the building in the CSIRO ICT Centre in Canberra, and he's got a background in mechanical engineering and computer science, and has worked in the heavy end of things in railways, the mining industry, and conducted research in teleoperation. And I first met Ken when he was doing a robot, which was in Perth, and he was demonstrating driving the robot in real time in Canberra. And it was kind of fun. It was hard to explain to people this wasn't some toy virtual robot. This was a real industrial robot that was being driven. So that was kind of fun. And he also works in mobile computing. He's got a doctorate from UWA for his thesis on web telerobotics using that robot. And he's a corporate member of the Institution of Engineers Australia. And what he's going to talk today is about VotaPedia, an audience response system, but being applied in the educational context. And he's going to get you to actually use it if you've got a mobile phone. So I'll hand over to Ken.
Thank you, Tom. So it's quite a new thing in CSIRO, the idea of doing open source. So they've had a go at a few. This is one of the few projects that exist in CSIRO at the moment, and I'd like to see CSIRO do a lot more open source things, but it's surprisingly difficult because a lot of the projects in CSIRO are commercially funded, and even those that aren't commercially funded, they're frequently trying to sell them, and it's seen as a big marketing advantage to be able to sell an exclusive license to something. So some people have figured out how to respond to this survey. So this is an audience response system. I thought I'd pose, or actually Kate's suggestion, I posed the question that she put on the press release. Will the future, this one here, will the future of innovation be built on open foundations? We've had 5 people express an opinion. Well, one advantage of this type of system is if you're asked to put your hands up, you often want to go with the majority. So somebody there thinks it's very unlikely, and in this environment I suspect they might be a little bit reluctant to say that. Hopefully anyone who's got a phone, please, we've only got 5 opinions so far, so please get out your phone and have a go. What is an audience response system? Well, a good example I like, if the show's not on anymore, but Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It was one of the lifelines. I see somebody with their phone up there. Do they want to look at the numbers again? Has it got spelling mistakes? I've done it. Oh yes, well there you go. So I typed that in there this morning, and yeah, so this is LAMP technology that was mentioned before. So this is built on top of first Wikipedia. So surprisingly, there's sort of 2 things. There's co-located audiences and audiences at a distance. They're sort of choosing who's the next singer or something on TV. And this approach can actually work with both, but we're really aimed at co-located audiences. These sort of systems aren't new, so these are a couple of the systems. They tend to be either infrared or radio based, and here's a couple of the commercial systems. But you've got to put in some special infrastructure. Everyone's got to have a keypad. Those infrared ones, which are like a TV remote control, are quite cheap, but they don't work in a large group because TV remote controls, the infrared works fine when there's one person doing it. If you all fire at the receiver at the same time, they deal with interference. The radio ones don't have that problem, but they cost a lot more. But there's an issue of makes it easier if you don't have to have those things. So we looked at, surprisingly, not a lot of people have looked at, are familiar with audience response systems. I suspect this sort of audience here, which was the sort of audience I surveyed here, only one had ever responded to a TV poll. A few had used clickers. 70% had never used one before. Most people were pretty enthusiastic about them though. One person didn't like them, and 2 people were unsure. All but one person had used Wikipedia, and a third of those people had edited Wikipedia, which is actually quite high. That was part of the thinking when we did this. Okay, how can you set up these surveys and understanding? We thought, oh, everyone's edited Wikipedia, but actually I find that there's not nearly as many people as you might think, although everyone uses it. So it's a well-established. What was the motivation of this? Well-established educational tool. Surprisingly, not used as much in Australia as elsewhere. Plenty of research indicates that it contributes to the educational process. So we said, okay, can we come up with something that doesn't need these clickers and web service, no infrastructure, that sort of thing. So use mobile phones instead of clickers. Costs you nothing to vote. Those people that did ring then will have, if they were listening, would have heard an engaged tone, and that means you didn't pay. But we can pick up your caller ID without answering. Sorry? No, we've actually, well, we talked about this with Telstra before. In a past project, a couple of years ago, we did a parking system where you started, it was a trial we ran in the ACT, and there's one runs commercially in Perth, and there's lots of them in Malaysia now. And you started and stopped the virtual parking meter with your phone. And Telstra was running a trial in Sydney, and we talked to them about this at the time, and it wasn't an official view of Telstra, but they said so many people do this now, most particularly young people, when they arrange to meet or something like that, they just do a quick ring on there, and it's such a common thing now that they're sort of, okay, that's how people use their phones, and they're sort of used to that. Mind you, if you want it to be commercial, you could put one of those paid numbers as well, and it would work exactly the same, but you need to get charged $1 a call or whatever, like the TV ones who run it as a money-making exercise. So being MediaWiki, this open source software. So the open source software that we built it on is MediaWiki. It's a MediaWiki extension, the same software that's used in Wikipedia. And this is built on top of, again, underneath that is this LAMP, Linux, Linux, although some of this can run on Windows as well, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Then this is how you just edit a normal page on Wikipedia, but we added, in our extension, we added one new tag, which is this choice tag, and then we process what happens in there to produce the what you see here, and we've got 10 responses now. I'm very pleased with that. Incidentally, if anyone has any questions they want to ask later on in the day, don't hesitate. We'll put them in and stick them up, and we can keep them on that screen over there, and then you can get some response while you're talking, and then see what, then address which is a good way to use these things. Not unsurprisingly, we're fairly committed. We believe a lot of us believe. Another response just came in. And there's other survey types. You can have multiple questions in the same survey. That's a simple survey we're running now. It just runs one question. Questionnaire, which is the one you're looking at now. We've got this concept of rating talks. Each speaker, you say 1 to 5, and then you get a list of favourite speakers. We could have done that today, but didn't. Concept of a quiz. So this is in an education environment. Again, answer a lot of questions, and this could feed into your assessment process. And here's some of the results. This one I'm actually got up here was done on quiz night in the bowling club. Tech surveys, another variation. So these are some questions that were asked in management stood up on stage and said, ask us what you think. And you get that's usually done with a roving microphone. These are some, I tried to put up some examples of questions that were a little bit controversial, but not too much so, because a lot of the questions were asked were quite, people had strong views on some things, and when they could express it in this anonymous way, didn't hesitate to do so, which they wouldn't have done with a roving microphone. And I thought that was quite effective. So that's the concept. It's open source. Download it from the CSIRO website. There's commercial operators already taken up. Actually, I had a slide in here for the commercial operator. Where's it? It's not there. I wonder where I'll put it. Anyway, it's got a company called EasyComms who does this at the moment, who've taken it up, and here we go, ANU. there's some users at ANU, there's some users in other unis. There's a bit of a testimonial from somebody. Here's the commercial provider, and currently there's a lot of people using the CSIRO one. That's got to come out of CSIRO at some stage. We limit who can use the CSIRO one. CSIRO is providing the software, but they're very sensitive about it's a wiki, so they only allow, we've set it up to only allow a few people to use it. It's really meant as a demonstration one. We want more people to set it up and run them, because CSIRO can provide the technology, but being a wiki, you could almost put anything on there, and that's not a good thing for. It's not right for CSIRO to be involved in that. We want to provide the technology and shift it out. You know, I just heard about hosting a server. You know, maybe Case might be a good team to work with on that. There's continuing development and support. Some at ANU, some at ANU, some at Udayana University in Indonesia, and there'll be a software foundation is the plan. That's pretty much it. Thanks. So I guess the next speaker. And while you're setting up, if there's any questions.
Yes, are there any questions?
What hardware do you need to run it?
It runs on. It uses some external service providers, but it only runs on this system you're looking at. Runs on 2 machines. You can run on a single machine, but the machine tends to get when you get a few hundred people hitting it at once, which you do in a student situation. One machine can't handle it, so we spread it across 2 machines. So they can be Linux or Windows actually, or one machine has to be Linux. If you have one machine has to be Linux because it uses a PBX asterisk, which is an open source PBX. So this uses a number of open source packages and then some extensions on top of it. So we rent the phone lines or we rent the numbers from a VoIP provider. So the PBX, we have our open source PBX talks to the PBX. So there's no fancy hardware. That's all provided by the VoIP provider, but it's not cheap. You've got to rent the numbers to do that. So we rent at the moment we've got about 100 numbers, and then we allocate them. Okay,
there was a question. Yeah. I'm just curious if you've released the asterisk config, the extension.conf and that sort of thing for how you make asterisk do that sort of thing.
It's not. Okay, you can download the package off the CSIRO website. The asterisk isn't included in that package, so all we've made downloadable is all the different CSIRO stuff. Actually, setting up, we haven't got the documentation. I mean, someone's offering to do that. It's not very hard. The extensions.conf is pretty trivial to do, but I guess you've got to know.
It's just a bit of a learning curve. I've been setting up one at home to do some things, and it's still tricky. So the more that are out there as examples.
Yeah, I think we have had a lot of people try to set this up, and some successfully, but no one has set it up taking just the download from CSIRO for it to work without some. And you've got to interact with service providers as well. So and that's not in the documentation, but if someone would be offering being an open source project, we'd be very keen to be able to include that level of documentation.
Okay, so questions behind you.
Oh, my question is, can you make the graphs look like a worm?
It's funny you should say that, because that company that I put up, EasyComp, they're the ones that did the worm, which was so controversial. Yeah, so they do a lot of this in lots of different contexts. They do the clickers, they do this, and they actually were the company that did the worm. It could be done, but it could be done. It would be a little bit because you have to dial each time. So it would be the one. I